I Fly Away With You. That is from the Mune Pi Parables from Sid's Carbonated Milk, and from the group Sydney Howard is waiting on the telephone. Sydney, are you singing on that? Is that you?
I'm singing backgrounds, but the lead vocals are done by Rodney Hoskins.
Okay.
And in my opinion, he's one of the best singers I've ever heard, let alone worked with. I used to tell people that you probably noticed that a similar sound to Luther Vandross.
Yes, got that kind of sweet soul vibe to it, doesn't it?
And I used to tell people that if I had to stop working with Rodney and had to start working with Luther Vandross, I would feel limited.
Well, Tony and I were enjoying it in the studio here, so that's good. So the difficulty with just dipping into the album and playing a song here and a song there is that it's difficult to communicate the whole wide breadth of both musically and lyrically what's going on, and so we'll play some other stuff in a little while from Sid's Carbonated Milk. One thing it reminded me of when I was listening to it, I had another listen to it today, and it reminded me of Was Not Was. Were you a fan of Was Not Was?
Well, actually, we have the same influences being in Detroit. Don Was is obviously a fan of P-Funk. I'm a fan of P-Funk. And the similarities that you hear in both of our music is our take on P-Funk.
Right, okay. Because it reminded me musically, but it also reminded me lyrically, because Was Not Was would write the weirdest songs. And there are some pretty weird things on this album, lyrically.
Well, one of my influences is Bernie Taupin.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to understand Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. and I love that, because what it is like it's having a steak dinner as opposed to cotton candy.
Yeah, sure. And some of the best songs are the songs you've got to dig around to get into. And that's true. I mean, thematically for the album, you seem very I'm just trying to find a polite way of putting it. You're not very impressed by modern culture, are you?
No, the problem I have is I think modern culture, especially, and I can't really speak for other cultures in other countries. I just can go by what I see here in the United States. It suffers from arrested development. Because when I look at what was happening in the 70s, and one of the biggest problems is living in the music of the 70s is like having gourmet meals served 4 times a day. And now being in this new millennium, it's like having Pop-Tarts. And not even having different flavors of Pop-Tarts. It's strawberry Pop-Tarts every day. And the only difference is how well they're toasted.
But that gives you one of the things that I like about the album is it gives you a lot of targets to shoot at, doesn't it?
Yeah, and mainly what I'm shooting at more is the messages that are there. Because raising children, well, I grew up a child of the 60s, kind of, even though I got into my adolescence in the 70s. I'm a baby boomer. But that was supposed to have been such a hard time because of the sexual revolution and things that were going on. But what goes on now, it's almost like this, and I know it was this way with me. Man, my voice cracked. It was this way with me, that if I saw it on TV, I trusted that it was okay for common parlance. So that if a word wasn't used on television, then it must be a bad word. But if it was used on television, then it must be okay. And the same thing happened with behavior. Nowadays, sex is portrayed on television as being as casual as a handshake or a high five. And the thing, especially raising a daughter in this era who has to form her own morality in the midst of all of the pollution that comes along philosophically, that's actually what I'm striking out against, more so than music, because music is more passive. You can choose to play it or choose not to play it. Philosophies are more penetrating.
Yeah, I can understand that. What about the spiritual dimension of music?
Well, the spiritual, you mean in music overall or in Mune Pi parables?
Well, yours, yeah.
Okay, well, in ours, the title suggests where I was, my direction, and that was to tell parables. Just a real short sidebar. I grew up going to Catholic school, and but I wasn't Catholic. We were Episcopalian, so I went from Henry VIII's version of Catholicism to the Roman Catholic Catholicism, and back and forth. So, needless to say, I wasn't really impressed from the spiritual standpoint. It was all liturgy for the most part. The thing that I was really into was wisdom. And I used to cheat. I'll say this really quickly. I used to cheat on book reports and pretend I didn't understand what they were supposed to be. And I would use Aesop's fables, where I'd read just a story. I'd summarize the story and say that the meaning of the story was whatever the moral of the story was. And I think the nuns there thought I was crazy enough that they just kind of let me go with it, and up to a point. But the thing was, it got me into reading Aesop's fables, and the Gideons used to hand out New Testament Bibles at our Catholic school every year that would have the New Testament parables and Psalms, or Proverbs and Psalms. Well, the thing was, Proverbs to me was a fable with just the moral of the story, which I thought was even cooler. So I really got into wisdom, and that was the way that the Lord drew me in to Him. And what I see there being a lack thereof so much nowadays is wisdom. When I hear the arguments that go on, where people sidestep issues instead of answering a question, letting their yea be yea or their nay be nay, and the people listening don't seem to have the wisdom to know the difference. So what this is it's sort of I guess, a philosophical supplement